This is Inform TV 100. Happy Black History Month. This is episode 12 of the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself. Please follow from episode 1 all the way. You can read this or let your children listen to it, let your grandchildren listen to it. This is a great Black American story of the travels and the journey from slavery. This is about slavery by a slave. Okay, so chapter 12. On the 1st of January, 1834, I left Covey and went to live with William Freeland, who lived about 3 miles from St. Michael's. I found Freeland a very different man from Covey. Though not rich, he was what would be called an educated Southern gentleman. He was a slaveholder, but he seemed to possess some regard for honor, some reverence for justice, and some respect for humanity. Another advantage of working for Freeland was that he did not claim to be religious. I state most strongly that the religion of the South is mere cover for the most horrid crimes. It justifies the most appalling barbarity, and it shelters the darkest, foulest, most infernal deeds of slaveholders. If I were put again into the chains of slavery, I would regard being the slave of a religious man the greatest calamity that could befall me. For of all the slaveholders with whom I have ever met, religious slaveholders are the worst. They are the meanest and basest, the most cruel and cowardly of all. Freeland's neighbors included two ministers in the Reformed Methodist Church, Daniel Whedon and Rigby Hopkins. Whedon owned, among other slaves, a woman whose back he kept raw for weeks at a time from whippings. His rule was this: whether or not a slave misbehaves, their master should whip them occasionally to remind them of his authority. Hopkins was even worse than Whedon. He often boasted of his ability to manage slaves. Every Monday morning, he had at least one of his slaves whipped. He did this not only to torture those who were whipped, but also to strike terror into those who were not. His idea was to whip for the smallest offenses to prevent larger ones. Horrible, 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 in the name of their so-called religions. So we will go on. Please hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and please subscribe if you haven't already done so. You won't regret it. You will not regret it. It would astonish you, if you are unaccustomed to the slaveholding life, to see how easily a slaveholder could find reason to punish a mere look, word, or motion, a mistake, accident, or even lack of power are all matters for which a slave may be whipped at any time. Does a slave look dissatisfied? Then he has the devil in him, and it must be whipped out of him, they would say. Does he speak loudly when spoken to by his master? Then he is getting high-minded and should be taken down. Does he forget to take off his hat as he approaches a white person? Then he is lacking respect and should be whipped. Does he ever dare to defend his actions when punished for them? Then he is guilty of impudence, one of the greatest crimes of which a slave can be guilty. Does he suggest a different way of doing things from that ordered by his master? He is getting above himself, and nothing less than a beating will do. Does he, while plowing, break a plow, or while hoeing, break a hoe? It is due to his carelessness, and for it he must be whipped. Hopkins would always find something of this sort to justify the use of the lash. Slaves would rather live with any man in the whole country than with him, and yet there is not a man anywhere around who made such noisy claims of religion, or was more active in revival meetings, more attentive to his church, more involved in prayer and preaching meetings. No one who prayed earlier, later, louder, and longer than this reverend slave driver. This reminds me of what's going on today. Should I interrupt? Please hit the like button, please hit the notification button, and please subscribe. But I must return to Freeland and to my experience while in his employment. He, like Covey, gave us enough to eat. Unlike Covey, he also gave us sufficient time to take our meals. He worked us hard, but only between sunrise and sunset. He required a good deal of work to be done, but gave us good tools with which to work. His farm was large, but he employed hands enough to work it. My treatment while in his employment was heavenly compared to what I experienced at the hands of Covey. Freeland himself owned two slaves, Henry Harris and John Harris. The rest of his workers were hired hands. These consisted of myself, Sandy Jenkins, the same man who had given me the root. The handy Caldwell, Henry, and John were quite intelligent, and soon after I went there, I created in them a strong desire to learn how to read. This desire spread to all others also. They came up with some old spelling books and begged me to start a school on Sundays. From then on, I devoted my Sundays to teaching my beloved fellow slaves how to read. None of them knew their letters, which I went when I went there. Some of the slaves of the neighboring farms heard what was going on and also took advantage of this little opportunity to learn to read. It was understood by all that we must keep our Sunday school a quiet matter. We did not tell our religious masters that. Instead of spending the Sabbath wrestling, boxing, and drinking whiskey, we were trying to learn how to read. They would much rather see us engaged in those degrading sports than to see us behaving like intellectual, moral, and accountable beings. My blood boils as I think of the matter and the manner in which those upright church leaders rushed in upon us with sticks and stones and broke up our little Sabbath school in St. Michael's, all calling themselves Christians, humble followers of the Lord Jesus Christ. But I am again getting off my topic. I held my Sabbath school at the house of a free colored man whose name I dare not mention here, even though the crime of holding the school was committed 10 years ago. At one time, I had over 40 scholars, and scholars of the best sorts, those who greatly wanted to learn. They were of all ages, though mostly adult men and women. I look back to those Sundays with great pleasure that I can say. They were great days to my soul. The work of instructing my dear fellow slaves was the sweetest with which I had ever been blessed. We loved each other, and to leave them at the end of the Sabbath was difficult indeed. When I think these precious souls are still today shut up in the prison house of slavery, My feelings overcome me. I am almost ready to ask, does a righteous God govern the universe? Why does he hold the thunder in the right hand, if not to strike down the oppressor? These dear souls did not come to Sabbath school because it was popular to do so. I did not teach them because doing so improved my reputation. They knew that every moment they spent in their school, they were at risk of being snatched up and given 39 lashes. They came because they wished to learn. Their minds had been starved by the cruel masters. They had been shut up in mental darkness. I taught them because it was the delight of my soul to do so that could better the condition of my race. I kept up my school nearly the whole year I lived with Freeland. Besides my Sabbath school, I spent 3 evenings in the week during the winter teaching the slaves at home. I have the happiness of knowing that several of those who came to the Sabbath school learned how to read, and that one at least is now free through my efforts. The year passed smoothly. It seemed only about half as long as the year which preceded it. I went through it without receiving a single blow. I will give Freeland credit for being the best master I ever had until I became my own master. But the ease of that year was mostly owing to friendship of my fellow slaves. They were noble souls. They not only possessed loving hearts, but brave ones. I loved them with a love stronger than any I have experienced since. It is sometimes said that we slaves do not love and confide in each other. I can answer truly that I never loved or confided in any people more than my fellow slaves, and especially those with whom I lived at Freelands. I believe we would have died for each other. We never made decisions about important matters without discussion with one another. We never moved separately. We were one, both due to our national friendship and to the mutual hardship we experienced. This is the end of chapter 12. Happy Black History Month. We are almost done with the book. So, happy Black History Month. God bless you. Be good to yourself as well as others. And we will see you in the next chapter. Joe Madison, what are you going to do about it? VOTE. Bye for now. Take care of yourself. Bye. God bless you.